Well, hey folks, welcome to part 2, and the main focus of this video is going to be on skinning. I'll also do a little bit about hanging the animal at the start, but primarily skinning. And please bear in mind that I'm also skinning this animal with the intent to tan it. So I'm being very, very pedantic and careful in how I do it. If your only focus in skinning this animal was to get to the meat, well then this whole process could take you a far shorter time. But look, I just think that if I'm going to do it, I'm going to present it in the most clear and best practice way that I know how to. And as per usual, and thanks for the feedback in the last video, guys, if anyone has any ways that they do this differently or any better suggestions, please put them in the comments below. Let's just make this educational. Yeah, so thanks so much, guys, for the response to the last video. Enjoy this one coming up right now, and if you're looking forward to part 3, well, it'll be out Wednesday next week. If you need a reminder of that, well, make sure you're subscribed, and there's always a notifications bell that you can click. Anyway, without further ado, let's skin a red deer. Well, how about that? This is such a unique opportunity to hang a deer of this size off the side of my home. This is homesteading. I love it. And this is actually, I haven't just hung her up now, I've actually had her up hanging for about the last 24 hours. And it's been perfect weather for it. I mean, yesterday it was just sleeting and snowing, that half snow stuff all day. It was good, it was a fridge for her. Perfect conditions to hang her in. It's also a very lucky time for me because I don't have to worry about things like flies too much. I haven't had to worry about temperature fluctuations because it is just so cold. Because even if the temps got up to, 8 to 10 degrees during the day, it's actually not too much of a drama at all. So this is good. Good chance to let us stretch out, set and relax. Should be quite easy to work on as well, like that, which is really good. So the block and tackle up there, really handy just for moving her up and down, but also being able to take this quite heavy weight. Yeah, because I'd like to be able to take the entire skin. That's my goal. But also just in terms of being able to utilise the whole thing and do this whole job effectively, well, far out, this is the way to go. If you're not in the position to be able to hang your animal up like this, it's not a drama. There's no reason why you couldn't do this lying down on a tarp. You just have to manoeuvre the animal back and forth a bit to work on each different side, particularly if you're taking the skin off. You have to be a bit careful about that. And I guess it's just a matter of making sure that the surface you're working on is as clean as possible. And that can be out bush too. Just maybe rather than a muddy, leafy spot, just choose something with more grass, more ferns actually. You can even cut down a bit of bracken and make yourself a bit of a bed, a bit of a platform for your work. Most people who are able to hang an animal up like this would probably have it, I don't know, off a main beam in a garage or something like that, where you can make your way all the way around the animal. I'm just stuck with this position with this in the way. I'm not complaining. The fact that I've got anywhere strong to be able to hang an animal of this size and weight up successfully, well, hey, I'm laughing. Now, so obviously, if you're going to cut up an animal, you need knives. And just say that you're limited, you only have a hunting knife, that's not a problem. You just probably want to keep a sharpener on hand just to keep touching it up. Be very mindful of scraping it against bone. Mind you, that's one reason why I like to have multiple knives in this process. The two main knives I'm going to use today is going to be a skinning knife, the curved edge to the top of it, and a boning knife. These are really good, and again, I just have a pretty cheap and easy pull-through sharpener just to keep touching it up. I don't feel bad if these get damaged. And to be honest, actually, that boning knife right there was actually my primary kind of field hunting knife for a long time. I just put it in an old K-bar sheath that I had lying around, and it did the job. If you get something like this blunt and you need to do a pretty brutal sharpening job in it, it's not like it's an heirloom, but it's very effective and does the job very well. Especially when they've got a slightly blunted end at the top like that, which, as I'll demonstrate later, is for use in boning. But you can be a little bit more rough and aggressive with it. I will still be using my normal field hunting knife at times, just because it's got a gut hook, but having a selection there for different purposes is very handy. So another consideration that when you're hanging it, particularly if it's a warmer time of year, which is basically anything except for now, you'd want to have a sheet over here, particularly to cover up any exposed flesh or the interior cavity. Also any bullet wounds or anything like that on the neck, just a chance that flies could get into it, lay maggots. You don't want that. You can also buy purpose-built insect netting that often comes with a gravel setup like we've got up there. that can be completely zipped up, completely house the animal, but also allow the airflow to come through. So that can be very handy too. All right. Well, for starters, the purpose of me skinning this isn't just to expose meat. I'd like to keep this skin. So the way I'll demonstrate it is as if you were going to tan it. If that's something that you're not interested in doing, well then feel free to skip forward to a later part of the video where I'm just focusing on breaking down the meat. So the skin that I'm keen to have is one as a floor rug, and in presenting that, you want it to be presented symmetrically and kind of in a sense of its natural state, rather than just something that's a bit lopsided. So I'm being very mindful when I put in my first cuts that I want to start by just doing exactly the same cut lines on either side of the deer, just so that when it all folds out that it's going to be perfectly symmetrical. So one really easy place to start is that I've got these cuts here, which are between the back tendon and the main leg bone, and that's where I've been able to hang the deer off this gravel here. It's exactly the same on this side, and you can see there's a natural line in there. So if I just get that to start off with, and bring it all the way down to the end there where it stops. Come on, there you go. And now I know exactly where to start on the other side, or indeed finish. So starting from the other side and knowing exactly where I'm going to finish. Take a bit of sinew there, a bit of fat. But cool. So those are exactly identical lines to start off with. Now, just with my first piece here, I might zoom that in so you can see it clearly enough, but in between the meat and the skin, you're always going to have a line of this tissue here, and that's what you're cutting. And there's going to be points along this session where you're going to find yourself picking up a little bit of fat and sinew, or indeed meat, and anything you can do right now to be very mindful to avoid that is going to save you a hell of a lot of work later when you're going to tan it. So for one part of this skinning job, I'm going to be using this knife, but for later on in the skinning job, I'm actually going to be using my hands. In the interest of just getting through this, I'm going to start flaying it back all the way up to the knuckle here, and that's what's going to be the end of the skin. I'm not going to do the rest of the hocks. I'm going to just finish the skin at either side of the knuckles here, and I'm going to do the same with their bottom legs as well. It's worth spending a bit of attention just on this section when you're working around the knuckle, and indeed that tendon, because you could very accidentally slip a knife and cut or damage that tendon, or indeed make the wrong cut on the skin, which means it's something that you might have to sew up later. But I've picked a point there where that's going to be my high point, and I'm going to just carefully ring bark it, basically. I think you can see what I'm doing there, but I've just picked that line, and if it doesn't go exactly straight, like I buggered it a little bit there, I can just start bringing it further down again. Sometimes it pays just to flay more of the skin back like that, just to give yourself something to work with. I'm doing exactly the same on the back there. Basically, once we finish skinning to just underneath the tail here and off the legs, everything's going to become a lot more straightforward, and a lot of our movements will be macro as opposed to micro movements and stuff like that, just because we're dealing with the big bulk of it all. So the next bit that I'm going to show you though is fiddly, in just a bit of care and attention. There's a fair bit of fat on her, which I'm very, very stoked about. I just want to be able to get down to this tail here. Well, got it down to this situation, even on either side, just so I didn't bore you. What I'm going to do is make a very careful, even split down the middle of the tail. And it's interesting, look at that tail meat, that's a very dark, distinct muscle right there. Take a little bit of dealing with after when I've skinned it all off. But what I need to do in the meantime is just get it off the bone. split and off the bone, which is he's going to have to be careful. It's going to be, if you had a scalpel, that would be a far more ideal tool. I don't have a scalpel at the moment, but that would really help just prise all this off. And then later on, once you've got this all on the ground, the whole skin's off, you can just far more carefully get in there and just make the whole tail skin more presentable with all that dark meat off it. It's also fine to work from the body outwards, and that way you can also find the grain a little more easily. So there I go through the other side there, and I can actually use my hands now and then just gently start prising that tail skin back. I'm peeling it basically like a banana, but occasionally when you get to a point of resistance, just because this, particularly with a fallow or a goat, this tail skin is going to be very, very delicate and easy just to break. So now that we're starting to get to the fast part, start seeing little bits of flesh like that, bits of fat sticking to it. The more we can avoid now, the easier it's going to be later. So this is where I'm going to switch knife for hand. And because this connective tissue is so much lighter, but I can also feel the grain so much more easily. From this point on, we can get a little bit more aggressive with it, but you'll already notice that bits of fat are starting to come off. There's, you know, little bits of meat. And look guys, if this is your first time doing this, it's going to happen, and it's not the end of the world, and it's just about developing their confidence, practice, and all that kind of thing. 4 or 5 animals down, you'll get a far cleaner skin. But look, I'm still doing it. I've done this kind of thing plenty of times, and I'm already seeing there's just a line there. That's meat that I don't want to be on the skin, that I want to be able to get myself under. Look, I could keep flaying along with the knife, or I'm going to just try and find a grain like that. I'm going to do it all with my hands. So thumbs more than anything. What we're coming up with there is yet get the odd little tiny bit, and that all dries. That's easy to come off, but that's the kind of skin that we're after. That's so ideal. Thumb's my best friend at the moment here. And to be honest, if this animal was a lot warmer, all this would have been easier too, but I really wanted to leave the skin on just as a really good protection. It doesn't let the animal dry out. If there were any flies around, there wouldn't be a drama, but look at that. It's got to be honest, if you do this all day with the thumb, it's a bit sore, but it's damn satisfying. Almost got it. Nice. Now I want to perfectly acknowledge in front of everyone that all of that could have happened in 10% of less time. If you just needed to get the skin off, you could have just wrenched it down, and a heap of this meat here, a heap of the fat would have just come off with it, and it would have made the skin very, very difficult to work with later. But you can do that if you have no desire to take the skin. So skinning's not always that hard if you just need to get the skin off the deer, if you know what I mean. But I want to show you the best way if, like me, you want to turn this into a nice rug or something. 2 more things have to happen before we go any further, and then the rest will be pretty easy. We need to cut these legs here, again from the knuckles. I don't want to go all the way to the hoof, I just want to go from the knuckles. And we're going to cut it even lines straight up the middle there. And again, that way we can make it symmetrical with both, we can follow the same line. We're also going to have to cut a ring around the neck. The head itself isn't going to be part of the skin, just up to the base of the neck. When all this is ready to come down, it'll just finish with the neck pop. We've got a skin. Slipping that underneath there, straight up. It's very satisfying when it works One go. Straight on up. And if anyone else does it differently to me, please let me know. At this point, I just cut it straight across to the middle and just join it on. See you there. All at the end. Alrighty. Folks, I just want to recognise as well that there's going to be parts of this demo that just won't be able to seem that clear, and there might be plenty of little gaps in your full understanding until you actually have your hands on an animal and see how it all comes apart. Right now I'm just working my way down from the shoulders just to the front of the neck. Well, I cut the skin in a ring around its neck there. It's been detached from the front shoulders there, so really this should be it. Almost there. Oh, she's done. Well, that's a good big skin. It's massive. Slightly better look at it for me holding it from the top. Hello, see you later. Oh, it's good and big. Huge. Massive. Now I'm going to whack her on the ground. There's a nice final product. As you can see, I mean, it could have been like that times 50 if I just yanked it down. By doing a little bit of careful work with the fingers, it's just, there's very little to clean up there at all. Okay, so I was going to start picking away at the skin to get the little excess bits off, but it's a bit of weather coming and it's getting a little bit later in the day, so I thought, well, main thing is to get the salt on it. We're salting the skin for two reasons. Well, it's going to pickle it and preserve it in the meantime until it can be treated later, but also to withdraw all that moisture. It's a big moisture withdrawing exercise, and that's going to make it easier after it's all salted, that any last little bits of meat, they're going to be like jerky and you'll just be able to rip them off. It's far simpler to get them off that way. So that's the way I'm going to handle it. And this won't be just one salting. I do one salting to start off with, and then after a few days of it draining itself out, any excess will be scraped off and a whole new layer of salt will be applied to this. So when I start salting, I really want to start working on the edge first, because when this all gets rolled up, a lot of the salt will smear over the middle stuff pretty easily, but the important bits that we don't want to compromise are right here on the edge. So I get a piece of skin on the edge, just rolled over on itself, and unless we focus on that and get the salt right up to the very edge, we wouldn't notice. So that's my first priority here, is to get liberal amounts of salt right up to the edge. And once I'm happy with that, then the middle stuff will be pretty easy. And always going to every last little corner, peeling them back, make sure they haven't rolled over, so every last little bit of skin gets some salt on it. So that's 4 kilos of salt that I've put on there, and I reckon 5 would probably have been a little bit more ideal, but that's okay because it's not the only salting that we're going to do. When it comes to the middle, a lot of when it's full folded up, the salt will mix itself around, particularly when it draws more moisture out, and spread itself all through the middle. It's just those edge bits that you got to be really mindful of, particularly on the first salting. See here, the salt's starting to get really wet. A bit of extra. It's already starting to really draw that moisture out. Just imagine a line down the middle. That's my fold point, and match up every single part of this side with that side. So, and yeah, some salt's going to spread to the middle, but that's okay. So, matching up that with that, covering her over. And look, you know, it might not be 100% perfect, but as long as every part of it has salt on it, that's the main thing. We made sure of that earlier, so that should be fine. Now I'm going to just take this tail here, I'm going to just tuck that in there and place it face down onto some salt. Beautiful. Now we're going to roll it. So that's in. Probably just do a triangle shape there, just so it's all tucked in. Oh, bastard, come on. Alrighty. Cool. Well, that's the first salt for the red skin. Now we're going to just, I'm going to put a chaff bag over it just to protect it. I don't know, anything that wants to get at it. And obviously, because of the way it's folded, any moisture it's drawing out is going to flow out the end here. So when I put it in this chaff bag, I'm going to put this end over a basin or a bucket, and I'm going to prop this up so there's just a little bit of downhill angle for it, just to gravity feed and draw all that salty moisture out. And then sometime tomorrow we'll probably be ready for a second salting, and I'll probably put more salt on it than I did this time. This was 4 kilos of salt. I'll probably up to 6 tomorrow. Means we'll get 10 in total. And that's presuming, of course, that that second salting gets all the moisture out. Because if there's still, yeah, a bit of juice in there, absolutely a third salting, without a doubt. There's just no point ruining a beautiful skin like this. And what a beautiful skin it is. I'm so stoked with it. Anyway, chaff bag, getting it sorted. And just overnight, that's how much liquid has come out of that skin. And there's more to come still too.